This man is out on a date at a busy restaurant. The evening's going great. Good food, good company. He takes another bite, savoring every bit, but suddenly, something's wrong. He tries to swallow, but his throat isn't cooperating. He panics and grabs his throat, looking at his date with his eyes wide. Suddenly, it dawns on him that he can't breathe. Soon enough, people around him start noticing. Then, out of nowhere, a hero appears. This hero rushes up to them and wraps their arms around his chest, and bam! They pull off the Heimlich maneuver. A piece of food flies from his mouth, with air rushing back into his lungs. The whole place claps, and though he's a bit embarrassed, he's just grateful to breathe again. But imagine if this happened when he's home, alone in his room, with no hero to his rescue. The worst part is, there's nothing left to cough up now. It is April 4th, 2019, and 51-year-old Darren Hickey, who manages a wedding venue called Ridgemont House in Chorley, England, is about to call it a day. But just as he is leaving, a chef asks him to try a new dish. The new dish is a fish cake, and Darren doesn't think twice before he pops it into his mouth, bites through the crispy outside, and then the heat hits his throat hard. It is like swallowing fire. Darren feels pain creeping in, sharper by the second. He gets worried, so he decides to get it checked out at the urgent care clinic. When he gets there, Darren tells the staff he feels this crazy pain in his throat, but he doesn't have trouble swallowing, and he can still breathe fine. Even the doctors don't find anything serious and send him home with some pain meds, telling him to come back if it gets worse. 2 hours later, Darren tells his partner, Neil, that the pain is only getting stronger. But instead of rushing back to the hospital, he tries to sleep it off. 15 minutes later, though, things take a wild turn. Neil hears Darren shouting from upstairs and runs to check on him. And there he is, choking and coughing like crazy. Neil bangs on his back, hoping it will help, but Darren slides down to the floor and things look really bad. Neil calls 911 and starts CPR, following the emergency operator's instructions. Soon, paramedics burst in, and they perform an emergency tracheostomy, cutting a tiny hole in his throat to help him breathe, just to sidestep whatever is blocking his air. Then they load him up in the ambulance and race to the hospital, hoping to get him there in time. Time is ticking, and things are tense as they race to get Darren breathing again. They are speeding toward Royal Bolton Hospital. It's a 20-minute drive, and they keep performing CPR the whole way. When they finally arrive, the medical team jumps right in, doing everything they can to help him breathe on his own. But they are worried. Could his airway have been blocked for too long? It's also strange that Darren starts choking almost 10 hours after he ate that fish cake. He had even told the doctors earlier that he wasn't having any trouble breathing. So why the sudden change? How could this happen to Darren? The food isn't even in his system anymore. Could it be a shellfish allergy? Or is it something else? Maybe it has to do with the temperature of the food. But why does it take so long for him to show symptoms? And why didn't he spit it out if it was scalding hot? Upon closer inspection, they notice that Darren is a stroke survivor from 7 years ago. That might explain it, because sometimes stroke survivors have delayed reactions. Their nerves are slower to respond. Darren might not have felt the fish cake was too hot until it was too late. But how could something so crispy on the outside be so unbearably hot inside? Well, the fish cake might have been pulled from the fryer and left to cool just long enough for the outside to be crunchy. Meanwhile, the moist filling inside stays super hot, like a hidden lava pit, waiting for an unsuspecting hero to plunge in. It's more like the fish cake plays a trick on him. There's also another possibility. What if the fish cake has been made earlier and then tossed in the microwave? That could open up a whole new can of worms, or should I say fish cakes. Microwaves can be tricky because they often heat food unevenly, creating hot spots that can turn your meal into a game of guess where it's too hot. And if you're not careful, You could end up with a surprise that you weren't prepared for. Now, imagine Darren takes a bite of his microwaved potato without waiting for it to cool down. Suddenly, he feels something stuck in his throat. After a trip to the doctor, they discover that his throat is swollen from the hidden heat of the potato, and so he has to use a feeding tube for 3 days. Or imagine a 79-year-old man who, in his eagerness for lasagna, takes a bite of something straight from the microwave. He ends up with a hoarse voice, drooling like a baby, and a burning sensation in his throat. At first, all Darren must be feeling is a really hot burn. But this isn't the usual "I'll drink some cold water and it'll be fine" kind of hot. Nope. This is a hospital-worthy burn that is cooking up something serious in his throat. Turns out that piping hot fish cake is doing way more than just stinging. It causes a thermal burn to his larynx, the part in his throat where his vocal cords are. You'd think it's something he could feel immediately, right? Wrong. These burns are funny. They hide out, swelling up like a slow-motion balloon. So Darren doesn't feel much at first, but inside his airway is getting tighter and tighter. By the time Darren is back in the emergency room, things are looking bad. Doctors run tests and find lineal edema, a fancy term for scary swelling that is closing off his airway. An endoscopy confirms burns all the way down his vocal cords and into his esophagus. The treatments are heavy-duty meds, careful monitoring, and intensive care. Lucky for Darren, he bounces back in 2 days and goes home good as new. The crisis is over, or so they think. Then, one night, Darren is back in the ER. This time, the swelling is out of control, and things go from 0 to serious, fast. Doctors work hard, trying everything to save him, but an electrocardiogram shows his heart has stopped. Despite 25 minutes of CPR, Darren is declared dead in the early hours. A post-mortem exam confirms that his death is due to burns from that ridiculously hot fish cake. No allergies, no other issues, just a burn so severe it takes him down. Dr. Patrick, who handles the case, mentions that he usually sees these types of burns in people caught in fires or industrial accidents. It is practically unheard of to find it in a dinner mishap. So, next time your food's steaming hot, maybe give it a few seconds to cool, because as Darren's story shows, something as simple as a bite too soon can lead to real danger.